Listen, wild ones. At dusk, with cold mud on your boots and pine smoke hanging low in the air, the wolf is not a beast at all. It's a warning the land remembers before people do. And here's the first thing they never tell you. When the wolf came back, the whole place started changing. Rivers bent, grass came back thicker, deer moved different. Even the quiet felt different, like the earth had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. 1. You are not small just because you move quietly. That's the lesson in this creature. It doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need to be seen first. The howl that carries for miles does its work before eyes ever catch a shape in the dark. And that alone should tell you something. Real power does not ask to be noticed. 2. You are built to find your own kind. A scattered pack can answer one another across open land by voice alone, a sound so clear that each one knows exactly who is calling. The wolf hears family in the distance, and the land itself seems to lean in and listen. That's where people get it wrong. They call it lonely. They call it isolated. But the lone wolf usually isn't running away from anyone. It's leaving to find a mate, to begin again, to found something stronger than what came before. And if you think that sounds like weakness, wait until you hear what happens when the rest of the pack answers back. If this is hitting you, subscribe and stay with me. And that answer in the dark is where the deeper truth begins. 3. You cannot be copied. Out on open ground, where the air is thin and cold and every sound seems to sharpen, one call rises. Then another answers. To you, it might sound wild and distant. To them, it is exact. Each voice carries its own mark. Each cry has a shape, a rhythm, a pull that no other animal in that family can fake. That matters more than people realize. Because the creature does not gather by guesswork. It does not run toward every noise. It knows who is calling. It knows who belongs. In a world that tries to blur everything together, this animal holds its identity even in the dark. And you need to hear that, chosen one. Not everyone who sounds familiar is yours. Not everyone echoing your tone carries your spirit. That is why so many people get uneasy around your growth. You make imitation fail. You expose the difference between presence and performance without saying a word. Just as this one can hear the false note, you can feel it. You know when something is forced. You know when someone is trying on a voice that was never theirs. 4. You do not need chaos to prove strength. This is where the old myth starts falling apart. People love to picture the pack as a mess of rivals, all teeth and tension, all challenge and noise. But it is a family. A breeding pair leads, the others follow, and they move with a kind of clean agreement that most people never reach in their own lives. And once you understand that, the whole image changes. Because if this animal is not built on rivalry, then what people fear in it may be something far more unsettling. Order. And order is exactly what unsettles people when they look too closely at this animal. 5. You are not rebellious just because you refuse confusion. Watch the pack in your mind for a second. Snow pressed flat under moving paws, frost caught in the fur along the shoulder, breath lifting white into the dark. There is no noisy contest there, no endless proving. The breeding pair leads, the others align, and the whole family moves with that strange calm that comes when each one knows its place without being diminished by it. That unity offends every weak idea people carry about strength. They want power to look loud. They want leadership to look like posturing, friction, constant challenge. But the creature is a patient predator, and even its patience has structure. It wastes nothing. It does not spin in circles to impress the forest. It does not fracture itself to entertain outside eyes. So when people speak about the wolf as if it were chaos with fur, they are not describing the animal. They are exposing their fear of disciplined power. 6. You can leave without being lost. This is where another lie falls apart. The one walking alone across crusted snow, nose to the wind, is not always broken from the family. Most of the time, the lone wolf founds its own. It leaves with purpose. It leaves because something in it is calling forward, not backward. The cold does not erase that instinct. The distance sharpens it. And maybe that is why this creature hits so deep for you. Because there comes a moment when the same bloodline that sheltered you can no longer contain what you are becoming. Not because love failed, but because destiny widened. And once that traveler hears one answer return through the dark, everything changes. And that answer through the dark does more than reunite a pair. It starts remaking the ground under their feet. 7. You change a place by returning to it whole. When these animals came back to Yellowstone in the mid-1990s, the shift did not stay in the shadows. You could trace it in the banks of the rivers, in the bend of willow, in the wet shine of water moving where it had once spread too loose and wild. The air over those valleys changed with them. The shape of grazing changed. The pressure on young trees changed. And little by little, the land stopped sagging under imbalance. That is not noise. That is consequence. A lot of people think power only counts when it crashes into a room. But it teaches the opposite. Presence can be enough. The return alone can call things back into order. You do not always need to force a transformation with your hands on every branch and stone. Sometimes your alignment shifts the whole field around you. Sometimes your being where you belong is the turning point. 8. You restore what fear has worn down. See the cold edges of a stream, the dark roots gripping the bank, the reeds trembling in morning wind. It leaves no name on the river, yet the river remembers. That is what unsettles shallow minds. They can tolerate noise, they can tolerate confusion. What they cannot handle is a force so true to itself that even the landscape starts adjusting. And if a valley can feel that return, then imagine what a family can feel when the right pair finally stops wandering and begins to stand its ground. Because that is where the next mystery opens. And when that pair stops wandering and roots itself, something sacred begins to take shape. 9. You are not building a crowd. You are building a bloodline. People keep projecting their chaos onto this animal, as if every member is locked in some endless struggle for control. But the truth is quieter, stronger, harder to imitate. The pack is a family led by that breeding pair, held together by memory, movement, scent, and trust. Even the air around them feels ordered. Damp earth, pine needles, cold fur, the sharp smell of snow before dawn. That matters, chosen one, because real power does not gather bodies just to look impressive. It gathers bonds. It creates belonging. This creature does not survive by turning inward against itself. It survives by knowing exactly who it moves with. 10. You become stronger when you stop performing separation. A lot of people worship the image of isolation because they think distance looks impressive. But this animal tells a different story. The one at the front is not pretending not to need the others. The one at the rear is not less important. The young are not ornaments. The elders are not in the way. Each position means something. Each step belongs to a larger rhythm. And that is why weak people misunderstand your path. When they see you pull away from noise, they assume you are rejecting connection. You are rejecting false connection, so you can recognize the real one when it comes. That is exactly how this creature lives. It does not answer every movement in the brush. It waits. It listens. It knows the difference between a passing disturbance and a true call. And once that family begins moving as one mind, the ground itself starts to give way to something even deeper: recognition. And recognition is where this creature becomes almost impossible to misunderstand, if you are willing to let the old myths die. 11. You know your own even before the world sees them. In the blue hour, when the snow crust shines faintly and the wind drags scent through the pines, a voice is enough to recognize belonging. A cadence is enough. The call comes over ridges, through open country, across more than 10 kilometers of cold air, and the one listening does not hesitate the way fear-driven creatures do. It knows. That should wake something up in you, because the world trains people to doubt what they already sense. It trusts the mark in the sound. It trusts the pattern it has learned in bone and memory. And that is why imitation fails around it. Noise can travel, so can panic. But a true signal carries something deeper. The ears catch it. The body answers it. The distance folds. 12. You do not answer every call. Now notice the other side of that gift. The animal is not fooled by every cry that drifts through the valley. It does not break formation because the dark is full of echoes. It does not surrender its path because something out there wants attention. That is where so many people reveal themselves around your life. They hear your steadiness and suddenly they want access. They sense your direction and suddenly they want to interrupt it. But this creature teaches restraint with frost on its whiskers and patience in its stride. It listens, weighs, knows, and only then does it answer. And when the right call comes back, not random, not borrowed, but true, the whole line of movement shifts, as if the night itself has made room. And when the night makes room like that, you begin to understand why this creature unsettles so many shallow eyes. 13. You do not need to be loud to be undeniable. Think about it. Damp wind over sage, moonlight on a frozen bank, a line of tracks pressed clean into the crust. No speech, no spectacle, no wasted motion. Yet the whole valley adjusts around the animal as if it has entered with a command no one heard out loud. Weak minds resent that presence because they have spent their whole lives confusing volume with force. This one never learned that mistake. It does not stomp through the dark begging the world to notice. It carries itself like something that already belongs. The same stillness in its shoulders, the same steady placement of each paw, the same calm in the face of distance. All of it says what insecure beings cannot say with all their noise. And when people sense such calm in you, they get restless. Not because you threaten them, but because your steadiness exposes how fractured they feel inside. 14. You make fear reveal itself. See how the animal has been talked about for generations? as if it were only menace, only trouble, only something to push away. But half the panic around it was never about what it was doing. It was about what it represented. A living refusal to be tamed by someone else's confusion. So myths gather around this creature like frost on wire. People who cannot read disciplined power will call it danger. People who cannot understand belonging will call it control. People who have never moved as one with anything will look at the pack as a family truth and feel something tighten in their chest. Because order, when it is real, has a way of exposing disorder without even trying. And once that discomfort sets in, the next thing they do is predictable. They start trying to put a label on what they cannot command. And the moment they reach for a label, you can already feel how much they have failed to see. 15. You refuse the box they built for you. This creature has been called too savage, too sly, too cold, too restless, and none of those words can hold it for long. In one stretch of country, it is a traveler. In another, a parent. In another, a signal carried on night air, a shape on a ridge, a set of prints beside a thawing stream. The same animal, and yet never small enough for one frightened description. So people keep reducing it, because once they name something too quickly, they feel safer around it. If they can pin the wolf to one idea, then they do not have to face how layered it really is. But this animal keeps slipping past those shallow frames. It is tenderness inside discipline, distance inside devotion, silence inside command. And if that sounds familiar, it should. You were never meant to stay inside the first definition other people threw over you. 16. You grow beyond the version they can manage. Watch the creature over seasons. Winter coat thick and pale with frost, summer fur leaner, body moving through grass instead of snow. Same spirit, different expression. It does not apologize for changing with what the land requires. It does not ask the valley to keep up. It becomes what the moment demands and remains true to itself while doing it. This growth unnerves people who have chained themselves to sameness. They want the animal frozen in a story they already understand. But it keeps becoming. It keeps adapting. It keeps answering to something older and deeper than outside approval. And that is when fear sharpens. Because once they realize they cannot define the creature, the next thing they try is even smaller. They start mistaking transformation for threat. And that is the smallest move fearful minds make. They call becoming a threat because they do not know how to become anything themselves. 17. You unsettle what has settled for less. Feel the valley here. Thawed mud at the edge of the water. Willow stems rising where they had once been chewed down too hard. The sharp smell of wet bark after cold rain. This creature does not lecture the land. It does not stand on a ridge and announce reform. It simply lives according to its design, and the weak arrangement around it starts giving way. Its return changed more than tracks in the snow. The animal put pressure back where pressure belonged. It changed movement. It changed feeding patterns. It changed where bodies lingered and where they passed through. And because of that, streams held their lines better. Young growth had a chance. And the whole place began to recover from an exhaustion it had been carrying for too long. 18. You expose excuses just by standing in your place. This is what people cannot bear about a force like this. Not that it shouts, not that it chases their attention, but that its existence makes every timid compromise around it look smaller. The patient predator does not apologize for being part of the balance. It does not shrink so a damaged system can stay comfortable. It returns, and what was warped starts to show. That is the mirror they flinch from. Because when the creature restores a valley without begging permission, every shallow story told about weakness, dependence, and control begins to crack. The mud, the banks, the cold running water, all of it starts testifying against the old lie. And once a landscape begins telling the truth, even the ones still watching from a distance have to decide whether to answer it or run from it. And that choice, answer or run, is where the real line gets drawn. 19. You do not chase approval. You create a field. This animal does not spend its life trying to convince the valley to welcome it. It does not soften its step so every nervous creature will feel comfortable. It returns, it settles, it moves in truth, and the field responds. Scent lines change, trails change. The air itself seems to hold a different tension, like rain waiting inside the clouds. That is what people miss when they talk about attraction as if it were charm. With this creature, it is alignment. The right mate hears it. The right family answers it. The right place begins to hold it. Even opposition reveals itself by circling the edge of that presence. Everything starts arranging around what is real. Not because the animal is begging for attention, but because authenticity has gravity. You have felt that, haven't you? The moment your life stopped bending to be digestible, and suddenly every false bond got shaky. 20. You pull truth out of hiding. Look at fresh snow at first light. Every print visible, every path exposed, every hesitation written plain across the ground. That is what this animal does to a landscape. It makes the hidden visible. It shows who belongs where, who lingers too long, who moves with purpose, who only drifts. A patient predator does not need an argument to reveal what is out of place. Its presence is enough to make the terrain confess. And that is exactly why uneasy minds react so strongly to your steadiness. They are not only reacting to strength, they are reacting to exposure. Around a force this honest, masks start slipping. Pretending gets harder. Weak arrangements start creaking. Old stories lose their grip. Then comes the moment no one can fake. When something that was scattered, quiet, and far off sends back a voice you recognize at once, and the whole horizon changes. And that truth is why the pack matters more than any single body in the dark. 21. You are stronger when everyone around you moves as one. Look at the animal in winter light, breath rising in sharp white bursts, paws set careful in the snow, ears tuned to the same quiet pulse. The pack is a family, and that changes everything. No wasted motion, no one trying to outshine the others. The breeding pair holds the center, and the rest fold into the same direction like they were built for it. That is not weakness, that is command. People who live in constant competition cannot understand that kind of peace. They assume power has to look like friction, like a room full of challengers. But the wolf teaches the opposite. Real strength is when each one knows the rhythm, trusts the lead, and keeps going without needing applause. That is why the field feels different when they move through it. Cleaner. 22. You expose the lie that loneliness equals power. The world sells a broken story about isolation, like being cut off is the same thing as being free. But this creature never made that mistake. Even the one that leaves does not leave empty. It goes to found what comes next. It returns to purpose, not to prove anything. And that should hit you hard, because so many people are trying to survive by standing apart from everything that could actually hold them. The animal does not need chaos to feel alive. It needs alignment. Scent, voice, direction, family. That is enough. And when that line holds, even the silence between them starts to feel charged, as if the next answer is already out there, waiting just beyond the trees. And so the land itself starts telling the truth around this animal. 23. You reveal what has been hidden too long. When the frost pulls back and the creek runs free again, the changes are not subtle. Bare roots show where the bank was weak. New green pushes up where the ground has room to breathe. This is what the wolf does without ceremony. It does not ask the valley to confess. It simply returns, and the lie of stillness breaks apart. That presence is hard on comfortable illusions. People like systems that look stable, even when they are worn thin. But this animal does not preserve the fake version. It exposes it. The overgrazed edge, the tired path, the silence where life used to move. All of it becomes visible again. And once it is visible, it can't be ignored. So shallow minds get so uneasy around real power. They would rather call it disruption than admit it is correction. 24. You turn damage into direction. The animal does not waste the hard ground it finds. It reads it. It works with it. It moves in a way that makes room for the next thing to grow. That is the part people miss when they only look at teeth and shadow. The wolf is not just force. It is balance. It is pressure used with purpose. It is a warning to anything that has grown too lazy, too heavy, too sure of itself. And that is the mirror again, the one so many hate. Because when the valley starts healing under that watchful presence, everyone watching has to face a question they've been avoiding. What in their own life has been overfed, overprotected, and left to rot in the open? And that question hangs in the air like cold mist over water, because this creature never lets decay hide behind comfort for long. 25. You do not protect what is killing the balance. Listen to the bank after rain. Soft mud giving under paw, reeds brushing together, water tapping roots in the dark. The animal reads that whole edge with a clarity most people never bring to their own lives. It knows when pressure belongs, and it knows when softness has gone too far. That is why its presence heals instead of flatters. A weak mind calls that harsh, but the creature is honest. It does not keep feeding what has already taken too much. It does not circle endlessly around what refuses to change. It steps into the pattern, restores the line, and lets the land breathe again. That is a lesson many people run from because they have built whole identities around overprotecting what drains them. You were never meant to guard the imbalance. 26. You force a decision just by arriving. This is where the animal becomes unbearable to anything built on drift. Once it is near, the valley cannot stay half awake. Trails shift, browsing changes, quiet corners wake up. Even the wind through willow seems to carry a different warning. Awakening, consequence. And that is why fearful people react so fast to your clarity. Your steadiness does not attack them. It confronts them without touching them. Around a presence this true, everything overfed, overhidden, and overexcused has to choose, tighten its grip or let go. The creature does not beg for that moment, it brings it. And somewhere beyond the ridge, with the ground cooling and the sky going blue-black, a voice rises again through the open distance. Not random this time, not uncertain, but near enough to change everything. And so the animal does not argue with weakness. It exposes it. 27. You make false comfort collapse. Under the thin blue of evening, with frost starting to bite the grass and the creek moving dark between its banks, the wolf keeps doing what it does best, standing where the balance can't hide. It does not soothe the valley into staying broken. It does not flatter the old mess. It just arrives, and the whole shape of things has to admit what it has become. That is the part people hate. Because once the creature is near, overfed ground looks heavy, overprotected ground looks tired, and overexcused ground looks weak. The pack is a family, yes, but that family does not protect decay. It protects the line. It protects the life that still wants to rise. And that kind of clarity cuts through every soft lie people tell themselves about what they can keep forever. 28. You are dangerous to anything that depends on confusion. A patient predator does not rush the truth. It waits. It listens. It watches the bank, the trail, the low places where everything hidden eventually has to show itself. So the animal unsettles shallow minds so deeply. It need not force a confession. The truth starts showing in the ground, in the path, in the silence after movement stops. And if that makes people uneasy, good. It means the old mask is cracking. It means the open question is no longer whether the valley will change. It's whether the ones watching from the edge will step forward when the next howl answers back. And that is exactly why the animal keeps slipping out of every box people try to build around it. 29. You are not meant to stay where you first made sense. The lone wolf founds its own. That is the piece people keep missing. It does not leave because it is broken. It leaves because something in it has grown past the old shape. Cold wind, open snow, a long stretch of silence. That is not exile. That is becoming. The creature moves on when the old ground can no longer hold the next version of itself. And that's the part that rattles shallow minds. They want one fixed story, one clean label, one easy answer. But the wolf refuses that. It can be a traveler, a parent, a signal, a watchful shadow on a ridge, and still be the same animal. That truth is hard on people who only trust what stays still. It reminds them that growth is not always neat, and calling it messy does not make it less sacred. 30. You force the world to meet you where you are going. See the trail after the thaw. Wet earth, broken ice, the sharp smell of pine, prints leading away and then back again. It does not apologize for changing direction when the call changes. It does not ask the valley to understand first. It moves, and understanding has to catch up. That's why your own growth makes people nervous. You stop fitting the old story, and suddenly they have to deal with the new one. And somewhere out beyond the tree line, the howl that carries for miles answers back once more. But this time, it sounds closer than before. And when that answer comes closer, the whole night feels different. 31. You know when what is meant for you is finally near. The air changes first. Sharp cold in the nostrils, damp bark, the faint mineral smell of water under ice. Then the stillness tightens, ears lift, bodies angle. No panic, no confusion, just that deep certainty this creature carries when the signal is true. It does not guess, it recognizes. Somewhere across the dark, the voice returns, and every nerve in the animal knows this is not an echo, not a stranger, not a borrowed sound. That is holy in its own way, because the world is full of noise, but this animal was not built to belong to noise. It was built to know. And when the right call finds it, distance stops feeling like separation and starts feeling like a path closing. That is why fear-driven minds cannot understand your calm when something real is approaching. They are used to chasing. You are learning to recognize. 32. You do not have to force reunion when the bond is true. Look at the creature now, shoulders low, breath steady, paws placing clean in the dark soil, the space between one answer and the next getting shorter. There is no performance in this, no desperate rush. The pack is a family, and family does not need to fake recognition. It arrives in the body before it arrives in sight. That is what makes this moment so powerful. Not that the animal is alone no longer, but that it was never abandoned in the way people imagined. The line was always there. The voice was always there. The path was always being drawn through the cold. And just beyond the ridge, where the trees open and the ground falls away into silver light, another shape finally steps into range. And when that shape steps into range, the whole story changes without a single word being spoken. 33. You recognize your future before you can fully touch it. Moonlight lays silver across the open ground, and there it is. Another body, another set of ears, another breath rising in the cold. Real now. The creature does not need a lesson in what this means. The answer it has been hearing is standing there in fur and bone and steady presence. Distance is no longer a theory. It is closing under living feet. This is why the animal carries such power for you, because the right bond does not arrive like confusion. It arrives like recognition. The chest settles. The body knows. The long road behind the traveler suddenly makes sense, not because it was easy, but because it was leading here. That is what weak minds never understood when they mocked the one moving alone. They mistook preparation for abandonment. 34. You were never wandering without purpose. Look at the scene. Frost at the edge of the grass, dark timber behind them, open land breathing between one step and the next. The lone wolf founds its own. Now you can feel the truth of that in the air itself. The leaving and the silence were the space required for a new line to begin. And this is where fear loses its grip. Because once the future stands in front of the animal, every old label drops away. Outcast? No. Aimless? No. Unwanted? No. The path was real. The answer was real. The family to come was real before anyone else believed it. Now there is only one thing left for the night to reveal. What happens when the call, the pair, and the land finally become one? And when the pair finally closes that last strip of moonlit ground, nothing dramatic happens. And that is exactly the wonder of it. 35. You do not need spectacle when you have arrived. They circle once in the silver cold, close enough now to catch each other's scent. Pine, snow, damp fur. The clean, wild smell of distance crossed honestly. No rush, no confusion, just a stillness so complete it feels like the whole hillside is listening. Then they turn in the same direction, shoulder to shoulder, and begin to move. That is the answer. Without noise or conquest, without some frantic proof that the journey mattered, the proof is in the way two paths become one trail without struggle. The proof is in how the dark no longer feels empty. The proof is in what comes next. A line through the trees, a den one season later, young paws where there were none before, and a valley learning the shape of balance again. 36. You were always meant to become part of something that could outlast your solitude. This is the secret the creature carries better than any sermon. The one who left was making room for a future large enough to include love, order, and return. A stream holds its bank. Willow rises taller. Tracks multiply at the edge of thawed earth. By morning, even the snow around the den mouth is pressed down smooth from bodies coming and going, and the place no longer feels claimed by emptiness. A single call crossed the dark. By the time dawn touched the ridge, it had become a household. The wind eases. Frost softens on the grass. Far below, water keeps moving between stronger banks, as if it has remembered where to go. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and walk with us into the next one. And if you felt the night change here, leave a quiet sign in the comments.